Hello everyone and welcome to another Masterclass Monday. So as you can already see, today's Masterclass is a little bit different and I have with me here today Rob Murray, the incomparable Rob Murray. Say hello, Rob.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
No, it's great to have you here. So the reason we have Rob is I know nothing about music, basically, and today someone had requested that we talk about being a musical director. So having worked with Rob now on one of my favourite projects, which was Jesus Christ Superstar, I thought who better to tell the world about being an MD and some of the tips and tricks of the trade than himself. So Rob, tell us about yourself. What's your experience?
Well, I've been MD now since. It's a funny story actually because I was thinking about when I first started, and I've kind of thinking back. I've always been quite bossy. So when I was younger, with my siblings, I would always put on kind of concerts and put performances together for our family, and my family had a very close link to the Burton Stroke Club Society. And they would keep asking us to do concerts, so I get all my friends together, and as the bossy person I was, I'd put a performance on for them, and then it gradually just grew. As for MDing for theatre, that just happened really by chance. I was late after I'd finished university. I did some concerts for the Burton Hospital. To raise some money for the cancer unit, and I then later got approached by a company in Burton to see if I had MD for them, and it's just kind of escalated from there.
Amazing. So did you study music at university?
I did, yes. Yeah, I studied music and instrumental and vocal tuition.
Goodness me.
Yes.
They just call my course drama studies.
I think it's just a posh one for music generally.
Amazing. So essentially, sort of becoming an MD then for you was actually quite an organic process. That actually once you'd MD'd one production, it just kind of spiraled on. Were you then approached by other groups or?
Yeah, I stayed with the Burton company for a few years. The experience I got from that was amazing, because obviously I hadn't trained in musical direction. I trained as a trumpet player, so I got the experience from the Burton company, and I really enjoyed it. And then I started to push into different kind of avenues and different companies.
Oh, amazing. So, I feel like the term MD or musical director gets thrown around quite a lot. What does working as a musical director actually entail? Can you tell us a bit about that?
So yeah, it's a huge job really, because you have to liaise obviously with the director, the choreographer, so we're all on kind of the same hymn sheet there, and then starting the auditions, I have to meet with the potential cast, take them through the audition process, and then after that we have to start with the rehearsals. So we also learning all the scores, note bashing, all the harmonies, making sure we get all the balance together. So it's a very musical process there, because you're sculpting a whole kind of show and making sure that everything is coming across correctly. And then obviously when we get to the towards the show, we start bringing the orchestra in. So I move away, well, not away from the singers, but we've got the singers and the orchestra together, and then I have to bring all that together as well. And then for the show, I'm working with everyone and making sure that the whole show runs smoothly, musically.
Yeah, it's a bit of a thankless job, to be honest, for the amount that an MD does. I think it's such an involved role, isn't it? I think you end up working on sort of every level, whether that's sort of the macro level of, as you said, kind of making sure everything fits together, or sort of blending the orchestra and the cast together, and also sort of the micro level of working with every individual singer or working with the cast on any given day. It really is a demanding role, I think.
It is, but it's so enjoyable if you think from the very first few meetings of a show to bring it right to the end to get onto the stage. It's so like rewarding because you've worked with every department, and there's little bits like when we did Jesus Christ Superstar earlier this year, to work with stage manager to make sure the music times exactly with what's working on stage, and with the lighting designer making sure we get all that together.
Yeah, how
it
was
is so
that?
rewarding.
How was that as an MD? Because obviously Jesus Christ Superstar was so very precise, based on the fact that there were no lines, there were no gaps in the music, as per se. How was
Gosh,
that
how was
working
it?
to such precise timing?
I loved it. I loved the challenge. But when Tracy, the stage manager, came over and says, "Rob, we need to do this," I was like, "Oh my gosh, how are we going to do that?" And but talking through it and working with the band, obviously with yourself, and when it all comes together, it's one of them magical moments.
Yeah, it's honestly it's one of my favourite things as the director is just that first time it all fits together is just incredible.
Yeah, but then likewise when it doesn't, it's like the worst feeling in the
Oh
world.
yeah, it's that fixed in place smile because you don't want to panic anyone,
No, and you think,
but
how do we get out of
you've
this?
just
Yeah.
smashed it all together and none of it fit. Yeah.
Your brain is racing. How do we get out of this situation now?
So I suppose being an MD is something that actually I get approached about by young people who've done work with us and things a surprisingly regular amount. You know, we did quite a few musicals at the Garrick, and a few of the more musically inclined youngsters are really interested in sort of that job, the idea of being a musical director. Are there any sort of key pieces of advice for anybody who's thinking? I mean, whether they're early on in their sort of life or not, whether people are thinking about job changing or that kind of thing. Are there any sort of key pieces of advice you'd give to anybody who's thinking about going down that path?
Yeah, I would get as much experience as you can, whether it's like with a community choir or a community like band, wind band, orchestra, whatever. So you get the conducting skill. I'd definitely learn piano. I think to have the piano skill is absolutely top importance, really.
Yeah,
Uh,
I will second the piano skill in the sense of, as someone who sort of who regularly employs MDs, it
yeah,
it's tough, but it can be that little thing that gives one MD an edge over another if you're weighing up resumes, is if that person can play piano.
yeah, and you also from a rehearsal point of view, I know when I'm like note bashing harmonies, it's so much easier if I sit at the piano and do it instead of asking an accompanist, say, can you go from bar, whatever, and explain to them, and then you have to explain to the cast. So if you sit behind the piano, you're in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think it's probably the best skill, really, as an MD.
Yeah. Would you recommend? Would you say that people who are going to sort of thinking about becoming an MD probably do they need to study music or not? I mean, obviously it's a vocational kind of job, but do people need to kind of take it to that higher education level?
I suppose that's a tough one to say because I went through the music degree route. But there's lots of good musicians out there that haven't had music degrees or kind of that top level training. I think just be open, listen to lots of music, talk to lots of people, and just get as much experience as you can, and never stop learning.
Yeah,
watch others, talk to others, and discuss ideas.
So
I think, yeah.
What are then some top tips you might have? So imagine someone's gone, they've trained or whatever they've done, or they've worked with lots and lots of different bands, and finally the day has come. It's an MD's first day on the job. What are some top tips you might give them for an MD who's first starting out, someone who's first entering into that professional arena, they're about to start work on a show? What are some top tips that you would give them to kind of help them through that first journey?
Well, it's absolutely terrifying to do that. So my top tips would be to be prepared and be flexible, because obviously, as we know, rehearsals structures can change. So I think to be as flexible as we got round it. It was fine.
Yeah, wow, you're getting sideswiped in this interview. Yeah, directors just completely change the levels
Rob,
of
can we just
commitment
do
needed.
this? What do you think?
But sorry, yes, I interrupted you.
No, but the advice is be prepared, flexible, and approachable. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So, what kind of prep work might someone do to sort of be prepared?
Know the score, so that don't turn up to rehearsal and look at that piece for the first time in front of the cast. It's I have done it. I've got to admit I've done that, and it's embarrassing when you completely mess up or you don't know the music, you don't know the correct rhythms or how the harmonies work, how the harmonies are split between the voices. It's not a good place to be in.
Yeah. Fabulous. So I'm always a big fan of I suppose helping people feel inspired about their work. Especially when people are listening to jobs that they might be considering in the future or that sort of thing. So, what are some of your favourite things about being an MD?
Favourite things? I love when you climb up onto the podium, say at 27 minutes past 7, and you get that buzz from the audience. And they're like, oh, it's starting, and you get ready for the show to start. I love that.
Amazing. Because an MD conducts the band throughout the show, don't they?
Yes.
Is that typical always of every MD? As I say that as someone who's doesn't necessarily know the answer.
Yeah. So we can either stand on the podium and conduct with a baton, so we wag the whole show, or a lot of the newer musicals now are ask the MD to play a keyboard part as well as keeping everyone else together. That's tough. So, some people prefer that. Some people prefer to stand in and conduct. I prefer to conduct. Yeah.
So that's your favourite thing, I suppose, in performance then. What's your favourite thing in a rehearsal process?
Oh, definitely when you've worked really hard on something, some really complicated harmony, and then you say, right, let's try it all together, and it just sounds phenomenal. And it's one of them where your hair stand on end, and you're so proud of what you've achieved and how well the cast are sounding.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I must admit, it's one of my favourite things as a director who's worked on musicals, is that moment. I said the moment where the music just hits the spot. As you say, it's the hairs moment. You go, right, yeah. It started.
Yeah, and it's wow. Where did that come from?
Yeah, fantastic. So, I mean, just because I like a bit of balance. And I think also it's worth giving people a bit of a realistic sort of view of a job role or that sort of thing. What are some of your least favourite things about being an MD?
It's a tough one, really. I think I enjoy everything. Sometimes when you get someone that just can't hold a tune, and you sit there and you think, how do we do this? And then you take that problem away. You sit at a piano at home or in your studio, and you think, do you know what, we could talk that line, or we can find a different route for where the melody can go. But I enjoy the challenge, so it's not something that I don't enjoy.
Yeah,
I enjoy the challenge.
Fabulous. So, what makes a good MD? I know we kind of talked a little bit about that with his sort of some key pieces of advice or sort of that or some top tips. But what makes a good MD in sort of all of your professional experience and all the different people you've worked with or that kind of thing? What makes a good musical director, or what sets a great musical director apart from sort of the norm?
Oh, I'd say be clear. Be clear in your instructions when you're teaching in the scores. If anyone needs any further help, offer that. So if you just say, when we get to a break time, come and see me for 5 minutes, we'll go over that. But then also when it comes to show week, be clear. You don't have to be too over the top with all your conducting and everything. Just be clear.
Yeah. And then one thing I've noticed, thankfully, working with you, Rob, as well, is I think something that sort of a great MD apart as well is that it's the positive attitude. And I think it's interesting that you, as you kind of said, that you love all the parts of your job, is working with an MD who loves what they do and brings that attitude to the table. Sort of is so much more inspiring, I think, for everybody, so much more enjoyable for everybody than when you kind of have an MD who's a bit flat or deflated.
Yeah, no, I agree, actually. I was working on a show quite a few years ago, and the director and myself, we just didn't hit it off at all. And I suppose that's a bad part of the job, is if you just don't get on as a production team. And that's really deflating, because your inspiration kind of goes, and if they kind of shout you down for what you're doing, then it's just not a nice position to be in. So like when we did Jesus Christ Superstar, obviously working with yourself, Denise, and then we had our assistants as well, didn't we? And I felt we were such a phenomenal team, and we worked so well together, that everything was just brilliant. It was amazing.
Yes, yeah. Well, we were quite lucky, actually, in that we kind of got to start with this intensive week, didn't we? Where we got to know each other, because that's a part that I think sometimes casts can forget, especially perhaps sort of community cast or younger cast. Is we'd met once before we started rehearsals.
Yeah, we'd coffee,
met,
wasn't it?
Yeah, we'd had a quick coffee. Amazing. Yeah. And then I've got one or two last questions. What's your defining moment when MDing where you were just like, yes, I love this. This is what I want to do?
Oh gosh, I think it's obviously, I think it would be the end of the opening show of the run, as long as it went well. But when you get that applause and any standing ovations, it's like a drug, and it just makes you want to do it again and again and again.
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
Amazing. Is there anything else you particularly want to cover yourself in sort of advice or knowledge that you feel people who are thinking about the role of an MD, or just for the fun of it, learning about what it is to be a musical director? Is there any sort of final pieces of knowledge you'd like to impart to them?
Yeah, come and chat to us. Yeah, I think anyone that wants to try MDing or want to look at it as a career, come and talk to us. You know, we're all on social media now. Send us a message, or come and at the end of the show, just come and chat to us down at the pit. Meet us at stage door and talk.
Yeah, so I think that's a really important point, actually, and I think I'd urge anybody, sort of even social media aside and that kind of thing, your local theatres, especially ones where they are producing sort of community productions where there are MDs, as you say, talk to us, get in touch with the theatre, ask if there's anybody that we could point you towards, because there seems to be one of these little known things, seems to be that 99% of people who sort of work in the industry and things are super, super excited almost always to encourage other people to get involved.
Absolutely, yeah.
And to offer advice and support.
Yeah, is because I teach as well, so depending on where I am, I will take a student into the pit. So if they're interested in playing in the pits or even MDing, then I will invite them down into the pit for a show to sit in and just get the experience that way as well.
Yes, yeah, and I think it's one of the best things to do is just ask. There's a remarkable amount when it comes to sort of learning about theatre and shadowing different roles that you can sort of get experience of nearly anything, any role in theatre, by just asking your sort of local theatre or your local industry sort of people to do so. Yeah.
And because we're so passionate in what we do, we obviously do like to chat about it.
Yes,
We like to inspire others.
Yeah, it's not a job any of us went into because we weren't that fussed about it.
No.
So we will happily tell anyone and everyone all about it at any given time.
Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. Amazing. Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you for coming on.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. No, it's been great. And if anyone has any suggestions for anything that we could talk about, I suppose, for the future, any topics you want us to cover with our Masterclass Mondays, please do drop it in the comments of this video. And equally, if you have any questions that you would like us to forward on to Rob or anything like that, then please do drop them in the comments below and we'll make sure he gets them and replies. Thank you very much for listening. Have a fantastic week and we'll see you next Monday. As always, stay safe, stay positive, and we'll see you soon.